It's spooky season and I'm really excited about it. Dark bleatings, everybody. I'm really excited. I love it turned the 1st of September. I live in Wales in the UK and it has just been pouring down with rain since, and this is the kind of weather that makes me feel peaceful and happy. I thought what might be nice on the run up to Ween is to give you my top 10 favourite vampire movies. I've talked about vampires quite a bit on the channel. I've ranked all my favourite True Blood characters. I've ranked every season, every vampire TV show that I've ever seen, from like my least to most favourite. I've ranked and recommended vampire books that I like, and I was initially going to give you 50 vampire film recommendations, but I just realised I already have a tendency to ramble when I get excited about things, so I thought I should cut that down to 10 really. But what I would really like to get out of this video for myself is some really great vampire film recommendations from you guys. So I'm going to just quickly run off the films that I have seen that were on my list that haven't made this top 10 recommendations, so that you know where I've already seen. And then anything that's not on here, you can probably safely assume that this one has passed me by, or it's a newer film that I haven't seen yet, because I just haven't had much time to watch anything in recent years. So films that I considered that have not made my personal top 10: Vampire in Brooklyn from 1995, Rabid, Van Helsing, The Night Flyer, Nosferatu, both old and new, Stakeland 1 and 2, Let Me In / Let the Right One In, Dark Shadows, Queen of the Damned, Priest, Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, 1958 Dracula, and pretty much most of the Draculas. There is one on my top 10. The Underworld series, Fright Night, both the original and the remake, Rise, The Twilight Saga, The Omega Man, Daybreakers, The Hunger, Night Watch, The Lost Boys. I know people are going to be mad that that's not in my top 10. John Carpenter's Vampires, the Blade series, and Renfield. So those are all things that I put on this list that would have maybe been in my 50 vampire film recommendations. With my top 10, these aren't in really any particular order, but I was hoping to make a list that reflected my personal taste but also gave some variety within this subgenre of horror. I didn't want to give you the same type of vampire film over and over again. There is one honourable mention before I get into my top 10, and the only reason this isn't in my top 10 here is because I mentioned it in my top 10 found footage horror movies recently, and that's Afflicted. And just because I've already talked about it there, I just didn't want to repeat myself with this list. But Afflicted is a found footage vampire film. I think it's the only one I've ever seen. If there are more of those though, I would love to know, because I love found footage and I think vampires work surprisingly well in that format. So let's see, where shall we start? Okay, let's just do it kind of in the order I've written it down. So the first thing on this list, no, we'll go with the serious one actually. I'm going to recommend Salem's Lot and its remake. So Salem's Lot was originally a two-parter mini-series, I think you would call it, like a two-parter TV movie based on Stephen King's Salem's Lot, the book. I recently rewatched it, and this is about a really small town. An author moves back to this small town. He's working on his book, and there's just something wrong. There's a new resident there, a guy called Barlow, that lives in the big creepy house up on the hill, and no one ever really sees him, but they do see his associate that's around doing all of his bidding in the day. And then strange things start to happen to some of the townspeople. That book is one of the scariest books in atmosphere that I've ever read. Some people find it really boring, but then those tend to be the camps they're in. Like some people find it really boring, and then some people absolutely love it, and it's in their top 10 Stephen King books. I found it really, really creepy. Like, I think the way that King managed to translate his vampires made them really scary in that book. There was just this looming horrible threat all the time. I think that the mini-series did capture that quite well, and there are some really like famous scenes from that film. Like, if you haven't seen the original Salem's Lot, then you probably have at least seen that clip of the little boy Danny Glick scratching at the window, looking all ghosty and scary out there. Just some really great ideas about where the vampires are kind of hiding out during the day and stuff as well. I was also pleasantly surprised. Oh, this just counts as one recommendation, not two, by the way. I did cheat a couple of times with this list. The remake, I watched because I thought, oh, I may as well, when I was on an 8-hour flight coming home from a holiday, and the Salem's Lot remake was one of the movie options. So I just thought, well, I may as well give it a go. I was kind of just making my way through the horror films, the few horror films that they had in the selection, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised. For the first half an hour, I was thinking, oh, this is terrible. This is terrible. The script is terrible. The dialogue is janky. The actors seem awkward with each other, and I just thought that it was going to be a complete bust. But then when they really got like the ball rolling into the proper plot, I was actually quite impressed with, firstly, how the vampires looked, because they were scary. The atmosphere, the same atmosphere from the book, came creeping in, and I was really, really surprised about that, because I would say that 9 out of 10 directors and filmmakers just can't translate the feel of a Stephen King book onto the screen for some reason. But I thought that it was really fun. I thought they actually did a really good job with it for the most part, so I would recommend those. Okay, next. This one is a little silly, and I had to put it on the list. So this would, you might not necessarily call this horror, because this is a spoof, and it's probably the only time I've ever put a spoof on a list, because they're not kind of my favourite category of film. But Dracula Dead and Loving It, starring Leslie Nielsen. And the reason that this works for me is it's so silly, it's so of its time. I think it came out in 1998, and I'd put it in line with like with like Naked Gun and things like that, which I'm sure people will say that's sacrilege, and there'll be people who say it's nothing compared to Naked Gun and whatever, but it's in that kind of caliber of spoof to me. And the reason that I like it so much, apart from that it's just really, like, you'll just be laughing despite yourself, because some of the jokes are really clever and funny, and then a lot of them are so childish, but you cannot help but find it hilarious. Like, it's not like all weird toilet humor or anything. It's just wholesome, fun silliness, right? And the other thing that I find really ironic about the film for that reason is because there are like hundreds of Dracula adaptations, hundreds of them worldwide, and so few of them actually capture the book. It's shocking. If you only know the story of Dracula from films, then you don't know the story of Dracula. Dracula is always made into something different on screen as he is in the book, because he's not that interesting a villain, to be honest. Like, as a character, like as a monster, yes. As a character, no, there's not much there. And Dracula Den Loving It is one of the few Dracula adaptations where they kind of stuck more closely to the source material for the characters and stuff. So even though this is just a big parody of the entire story, the story beats and the characters are more on point. She will become one herself. It's just a really good time. And if you're looking for a fun family film for October, if you've got kind of, I would say kids maybe from the age of like 8 up, there are some adult jokes in there, but they kind of just go over your head when you're a kid, from what I remember when I saw it. But it's just such a fun time. Okay, next, let's go. People are gonna say this is a classic film at this point, and it makes me feel old. I'm going to go From Dusk Till Dawn. I did not like the TV version of it, but the film, and I feel this is one of those films where if people haven't seen it, I don't tend to tell them that it's a vampire film. I just go, trust me, even if you think this isn't your kind of film for the first half hour or whatever, just trust me that it's going somewhere you will like, because the fact that it's a vampire film is a surprise about a third of the way into the film. But I couldn't not put it on this list, and I couldn't like dance around why it was on the list. Obviously this is a top 10 vampire films recommendation. So this is starring George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino, Juliette Lewis, and a couple of other people whose names I don't remember, I'm very sorry. Little cameo, well, I say cameo, little small parts from like Danny Trejo, and Tom Savini is in this as well. This is about Seth, and I don't remember George Clooney's character name. unless he was Seth. But anyway, two brothers, they kind of like criminal gangsters. They rob things, they kidnap people, and they're bad dudes. And they're trying to cross state lines into Mexico because the police are hot on their trail. And they kind of commandeer a family camper. Unfortunately, the family is still in it, so it's a dad and his two kids, who are like young adults. And yeah, so they're just trying to cross the border, and then the deal is that they're just gonna get to this bar, spend the night there, and then when the gangster brothers are picked up, then the family are free to go because they've done their part. So they get across the border into the middle of nowhere. They find a bar called the Titty Twister, which is where the gangsters have been told to meet up with their guy. And it's, you know, the family are a little pearl clutchy. I think the dad was a pastor, so, you know, there's you know, sexy dancing women and a sort of kind of rock and rolly kind of band, and it's got that kind of like Down Dirty South kind of feel to it. And then, you know, the staff start barricading the doors and things like that. And they kind of have a rule in this bar that it's for truckers only, the kind of people who pass through, who are on the road a lot, who, like, if they went missing, people wouldn't automatically know where to look. It's really, really fun. This, I would call this sort of like a good old-fashioned carnage horror film. Once it gets going, it's just action, action, action with the vampire stuff. The vampires look horrible. The humor is really on point in it. It's not like a comedy by any means, but some of the characters are really funny, and there are some really funny little visual gags, as well as like some sassy one-liners and things like that. It's just a really, really great time, and if you haven't seen it, I can't recommend it enough. It's, yeah, they just did such a great job overall with this one. Next, this is, right, so this isn't, maybe it is, maybe it isn't a vampire film, but I couldn't not put it on here because this is my favourite Nicolas Cage, and it's a film called A Vampire's Kiss. And this is about a guy who, I'll be honest, I haven't seen this for a long time, but this is how burned into my memory this film is, and how deep my nostalgic love for it goes, because it is so funny. I mean, it's dark, but it's really funny, and if they'd cast anyone other than Nicolas Cage, I don't know if this would have been a memorable watch. I can't imagine anybody else playing this role, because I just don't think any other actor in the world would make the decisions that Nicolas Cage made. But anyway, it's about a guy who sees a therapist, and he's got this full-time kind of corporate job. I can't remember what he does, but he's in suits a lot. And he thinks that he is turning into a vampire, and whether he is or isn't really the point here. It's about his reaction to his belief that he's turning into a vampire, and how that informs all of his behavior and decisions going forward. It's Nicolas Cage getting increasingly manic, giving us some of the weirdest scenes in film history. I'm going to go ahead and go as far as to say that. It's ridiculously entertaining. Parts of it are silly because of Nicolas Cage, and then parts of it are like, I was hooked. I can't really give you sort of like a linear recap of the plot, because I kind of remember this in visuals, in specific scenes, but it's very entertaining. I don't know if I watched, like, I haven't seen it since I was young, and I watched it a few times when I was younger, and it's just burned right in there. I don't know if I would have a different response to it as an adult, but when I watched it as a teenager, this was just one of the best things I've ever seen. So I'm gonna go ahead and recommend it, despite not seeing it for years and years and years, because if nothing else, it's prime Nicolas Cage. It's even better than Oh God, Not the Bees, okay? Alrighty, let's see, what shall I recommend to you next? Okay, let's go with, so we've had a spoof, we've had something that's maybe a little more psychological and silly, we've had a classic and its remake. From Dusk Till Dawn is more dusty, gangster, almost a western feel to it with vampires. Let's go for something classic and gothic next, and that is Interview with the Vampire. I haven't seen the TV series yet, but that's coming onto Netflix in the UK next week, I think, so I am really looking forward to it, because I've heard mixed things, but I'll make my own mind up. Interview with the Vampire is based on the Anne Rice book of the same name. It was the first in the Vampire Chronicles series, and this film was made in the 90s. And it's about a vampire called Louis who agrees and kind of like wants to be interviewed by a journalist. He wants to tell his life story, and the book is written sort of from Louis's perspective as he's telling the journalist his life story. And it's the story of him becoming a vampire. He was very depressed human. He kind of had a death wish. The vampire that sired him, Lestat, appears, you know, right place, right time, and then this gives Louis a whole new lease of life. But he's very tortured by, you know, the killing people and drinking human blood and everything. And Anne Rice really kind of, I doubt that she was the very first person to give us this sort of tortured romantic idea of a vampire, but she is certainly the person who popularized that, if that wasn't already a thing. I really think that if without Anne Rice we wouldn't have had the Vampire Diaries, we wouldn't have had Twilight, and some people might say the world would be better if that were the case. But this idea of this kind of vampire, Lestat, on the other hand, is a menace who loves his vampiric nature. He's unapologetically a monster with it. He really has fun with it. So not only is he like, okay, cool, I'm thirsty, I'm going to need to drink some blood, you know, he's dancing around with corpses, singing songs, being unnecessarily cruel, scaring the shit out of people before he eats them. He really likes playing with his food. And these performances so Brad Pitt played Louis, and this is the most sensitive, probably deep performance I've ever seen from Brad Pitt in his career. I do think he's a good actor generally, but this role was just a bit different from what you'd normally expect to see him in. And shockingly, the stand-up performance is Tom Cruise as Lestat, who Anne Rice did not want, but apologized after, apparently, for publicly saying that that was a bad casting choice, because he nailed this role. It's my favorite Tom Cruise role of all time. We've also got Kirsten Dunst, I think, in her first role. I think that she was 12 when she was in this, but she plays Claudia, who is a little girl who they make into a vampire. And then so her role over time is she's firstly a little girl, then she's a little vampire girl, and then she is an aging vampire trapped in the body of a little girl that she's never going to age. And this film is so, it's beautiful. For a start, the score is beautiful. We're in the late or mid 1800s, I think, for this film, so the costumes and the set dressings and everything, it's just got this lovely classic gothic aesthetic, as well as the fact that it's a gothic story, because it's all about death, escaping death, or like continuing to live through death. And it was also pretty progressive. They dialed back the homoeroticism a bit for the film, because I'm sure they must have been a bit worried about that even in the 90s when they released it. But essentially, this is the story of two men raising a daughter, parading around cities and spoiling her in a sort of very aristocratic kind of fashion. And really it's about the growing tension between the three of them. Like, Claudia is really the catalyst, because she starts to really resent what she is, and she wants to know which one of them did it. And so Louis and Lestat's relationship starts fractured and continues to be that way. Then there's a whole bunch of other things going on, but it's just it's beautiful. And if you like atmosphere, character stories, but with like the cruelty and blood splattery violence that you like in vampire films, this is such a great combination of all of those things. It's one of my favorites. I love it so much. Oh my god, my cat's going insane, sorry. Could just see Loki's paws appearing under the door, and he was going nuts trying to open it, and now he's gonna freak out because the door's shut and he's gonna want to get back out. Okay, where were we? Okay, let's move on to Blood Red Sky. This is one I actually saw more recently, although I think this is probably fairly recent, maybe in the last 5 years. I could be wrong about that, maybe in the last 10 years. This is about, the story of this was very appealing to me. So this is essentially vampires on a plane, but they managed to do this without making it really like campy, this kind of idea. And it's not, you know, like snakes on a plane, or, you know, zombies on a train, which is also a great film, Train to Busan. different subgenre though. This is about a woman who has boarded a flight with her son. Loki, please don't attack things when I'm talking. So they're on this flight and she needs to get somewhere for a treatment that she needs, and it's time sensitive. And the actual thing of it is she's a vampire and she has been suppressing the sort of carnal animalistic side of her. So vampires in this universe are like, you can either just roll with it and then you go full monster, or you can try to suppress it. It's kind of like a little bit like Blade, but very different, because once you've lost it, you've lost it. There is no going back to your humanity if you cross a certain line with this. And so she's been really, really struggling with this, and she's obviously very concerned about the safety of her kid as well. So she's on this plane and things go awry, things go off track. It's looking like she might not be able to get where she needs to go in time, and this is all just becoming a disaster. But yeah, so there's more to it than that, but I really don't want to spoil it for you. But if you haven't seen it, and you love vampire films, this is such a great one, because we've got a complex character with an interesting backstory and kind of like an origin for how this happened to her, and then we've got some antagonists that are extremely interesting also. And then we've got the location. So people, this is the most trapped you could probably be, is if you're in the air on a plane and stuff starts going down like this. So and then you've got all these human characters that have got no idea what's going on, because this isn't a world where vampires just exist. Loki, please. This isn't just a world where vampires just casually exist and everyone's, you know, on board with that. So it's a really it's a great film. And then of course the ante is up. There's a fair amount of carnage, and I don't know, I don't know what my favorite thing about vampire films is. I don't know if it's like the opportunity to explore really great character stories that can span hundreds of years, and so we can go back in history with them and see, you know, real character development over all this time, or if it's just the carnage, the toothy, sometimes claw-like, bloody, flesh-tearing carnage. I don't know what my favorite thing is about it, but I do know I like it all. This one is like a lesser talked about film. I think that this was subtitled. I don't remember what language it's in. If it is, I can't remember. I don't actually remember if it's in English or if this is a subtitled foreign language film, but regardless, it was such a good time. Alrighty, we are getting into my couple of actual favourites now. Let's go with Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, because that was inevitably going to be on here. I didn't want to have two Draculas on this list, but I could not put the Coppola one, and if I'm being true to myself, I could not have Dracula Dead and Loving It left off either. So Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula is my favourite Dracula film, my favourite adaptation, and it is not very faithful to the book. And usually I really care about that, but I think that Coppola made some really great decisions about translating this kind of story to the screen in a way that would be satisfying for people to watch, in a way that would make Dracula a way more interesting character. Excuse me. It also makes Mina a much more interesting character. We had the, I can't remember her name, the woman who played Lucy. It was Sadie Frost. It was her first role, I think. So, Loki, please, this is crazy. Get away from there, come on. So, in this version of Dracula, you know the classic story, Dracula's a count from Transylvania. Jonathan Harker goes over there to do some lawyering for him, gets trapped in the castle, they're vampire brides, and then Dracula comes over to London and gets a little obsessed with hunting Mina and co. And then they're all trying to save her before she goes full vampire. So in this version of the film, Mina is the reincarnated love of Dracula's life. This is all in the opening, who believed that he had been killed in war. He was serving his church, fighting for God. He was this great battle leader and warrior, sacrificing, you know, his time with his love and everything to go off and fight for the church and his country. And she is led to believe while he's gone that he was killed in battle, and she's so distraught by this that she throws herself off the tower and dies. So when he returns, and he's told this, not only does he find out that he has verily been forsaken, with the loss of the love of his life is the worst thing that could possibly happen to him, and he feels really resentful towards God that this was his reward for everything that he has done for his faith. But then the priests are pretty callous about this, and they inform him that he will not be seeing her in heaven ever or ever again, because suicide is a mortal sin, and so she will be in hell now. And so he absolutely, what do the kids say, he has a crash out. And do you know, I absolutely love that phrase as a way of describing someone freaking out. But saying Dracula had a crash out, if you've seen this film and you can picture the scene, it's so funny for some reason. But he has a major crash out, and he curses God, curses the church, revokes all of his loyalty, and it turns him into Dracula. Like, he becomes this monster, like he pledges his allegiance to the darkness instead. So when Jonathan turns up, when he's, wants to buy his property in London and and he sees a picture of Mina, understandably, he's like, oh my God, she's back. She's back. That's my love, and she's back. So that's his, like, main mission for going to London now. Like, he wants Mina, he wants to be reunited, he wants to rekindle their romance. She obviously doesn't remember him because she doesn't know that she's reincarnated, but she does feel like she knows that she knows him. And so Dracula he's very layered in this, and people keep describing this film as a gothic romance. It is not a gothic romance. This is not a romance. I mean, it has a romantic, like a melodramatic romantic flair to it, that's very fitting of the time period of the literature and also the time that the film is set in, and it really matches, like the tone of it really matches, like beautiful costumes, beautiful sets, beautiful soundtrack and score. It's like, honestly, it's really a feat of filmmaking. Like, they pretty much did almost everything as in-camera effects rather than CGIing stuff. It's aged really, really well. Looks wise, it's gorgeous. But it's not a romance. Like, you can be forgiven for wanting Dracula to get the girl, because we're seeing this so much from his perspective, which is unlike other takes on Dracula. You can't help but feel sorry for him and sort of rightly indignant with him about the genesis of his sort of like monster arc. But he is a horrible monster that turns up in London, starts killing her friends, traps her fiance in a castle, left to be fed on by his creepy snake-haired vampire brides, who are amazing, by the way. And he slowly woos her using some of his vampire influence to do it, and he uses her confusion about her feelings to his advantage, all under the guise of that he loves her. So this is a monster story on several levels, and it's also just a great film. It's long, but for the day it was made, it was long. I think 3 hours or whatever is the typical runtime now, isn't it? I don't think it's that long, but it's just beautiful. I could talk about it all day. I'm going to stop because I realize how much I've talked about it. But yeah, if you like gothic, gorgeous, if you're into those aesthetics, there is no film better than this one for sort of like your classic vampire aesthetics. It's just so beautiful. So much thought went into it. Oh no, I'm going to stop talking about it. But yes, that one, that is the pinnacle of Dracula films for me, and I don't think it's ever going to be outdone. All right, now for something completely different. Let's go with What We Do in the Shadows. Now, not a horror film, but one of the greatest vampire films. This is a comedy. I think is it Australian or is it New Zealand? Oh shit. Oh, so sorry for mixing that up, guys. The accent sounds similar to me, so I get confused with it. But it's a kind of like a documentary style group of vampires that live together in a house share, and it's just a comedy, and it uses a lot of the vampire tropes. The reason that this comedy is so effective is, firstly, like it's genuinely really funny. Like the vampire film references and nods are all in there, so like if you're someone who really loves vampire fiction, you're gonna get lots of little Easter eggy things, like satisfying little things out of it, but like it's not done in like a super fan servicey way. It's a hilarious script. The characters are all really unique and just so funny in their own ways. Their dynamics are really funny, and it's a contemporary setting. It's like set today in this day and age, and it kind of like makes fun of a lot of the tropes, but in like a kind of a we're also fans of this genre kind of way. It has like this weirdly wholesome feel to it, but also it does not veer away from blood, guts and gore just because it's a comedy, and because it's a documentary style. I think that they had to be really careful with how they did the effects, and it all looks really good. It's just really, really funny film. That's another one I could talk about all day. It's a very quotable. You've probably heard people just throw out film quotes from it without realizing what it's from if you haven't seen it. There's also a TV series of it, which is also very, very funny. But I would say watch the film first if you're gonna give them a go. It's just honestly like 10 out of 10. It is just such a funny, good time. I have yet to meet someone who's seen What We Do in the Shadows that doesn't absolutely love it. Okay, what do we have left? Right, we've done Dracula Dead and Loving It, Vampire's Kiss, Salem Slot, From Dusk Till Dawn, Interview with the Vampire, What We Do in the Shadows, Dracula, Blood Red Sky. We have 2 left, and these are my top 2. My cat's just trying to F at my office, I'm so sorry. These are my top 2 vampire films. Loki, I'm so sorry. These are my top 2. I'm going to go with 30 Days of Night first, and then save the best to last, in my opinion. 30 Days of Night is just one of the best vampire films ever made, in my humble opinion. It's based on the graphic novel series. There is also a novelization of the film version written by Tim Leben, which is fantastic. Oh my god. So the film, I can't remember any of the names of the actors apart from Josh Hartnett's in it. It's set in Barrow, Alaska, which is a town that goes dark for a month of the year. I think in real life it's actually closer to 60 days, but I can see why that would be a bit impractical for the plot of this film. But basically the sun sets and then does not rise in this part of the world for 30 days, 30 nights. So the town is just engulfed in nighttime, and this has some Dracula references actually. A ship appears on the horizon there, a little dark, scary looking ship, and there are vampires on it that have picked out this town to attack, feed on, get their fill of blood and whatever for the season. Because the place is completely cut off, you know, there's only one plane, it goes out, and now nothing else is going to be coming in, and there's no way to get out for the month. So yeah, on the first like night, vampires attack, the town is under siege, and the people who somehow survive this wave of just absolute carnage are now faced with not only having no reprieve in like the form of daylight, so there's no time of day that is any safer for them, but the vampires are hunting anyone that might be left because they want to wipe everyone out. They're also so they, you know, obviously vampires are super hearing and they're really fat, you just can't risk being seen. But we're talking the worst weather conditions to be trapped without being able to put your lights and your generators on and all of that kind of stuff. And so it's a group of people who are just going to freeze to death if they don't do something or get somewhere. And the other great thing about this film, so it's just like a really just great setting and a great concept. It's one of the most genius vampire film concepts I have ever seen, or book, sorry, it was a graphic novel first, but what a great idea. We do have some like relationship and character drama with the people, but that's kind of like secondary to the main thing of survival, but still interesting. But the vampires themselves are some of the scariest vampires that have ever been put onto screen. They just look horrible. They have like their own language, so you can't really get a sense of how old these things are and where exactly they come from. Like, they're still shrouded in mystery. Like, the more you see about them or learn about them, the more you're like, well, what are these things and where did they come from? They're very cruel. They're like pack mentality kind of creatures. There's no reasoning with them. You're not going to talk your way out of being killed by one of them. They are so savage. And this film has got one of the greatest scenes of like horror panic and bloodshed that I've ever seen. Is when the vampires first attack. It's just sort of this montage of everyone getting absolutely effed up and they were really creative with how they shot it, with the scenarios and how the vampires were killing people. Like the vampires, only like one or two ever have any lines. Like the main one really is the only one who speaks, but they all have very distinct characters, which are all horrible, and I don't know which one would be worse to run into. Yeah, just absolutely fantastic film. And like that montage like ends with an overhead aerial shot of just people running through the snow, and there'll be like a blood splatter over here and a shotgun blast over there. It's just so good. Like if you love vampires, I can only assume that you have seen this, but if you haven't, you need to fix that immediately. And the last one, this is a lesser talked about film again because it came out within months of The Lost Boys coming out. So it got overshadowed by it. I love The Lost Boys, don't get me wrong, and that was a contender for this list. But so by comparison, The Lost Boys had Kiefer Sutherland and or everyone else's names have escaped me, but it was a really great cast, and it's the most 80s film I've ever seen. It was made in the 80s, it feels 80s, and it's also like an alternative crowd in the 80s, so it really appealed to me. It's like a group of bikers, and we've got Michael. They're very rock and roll, leather jackets, you know, they're cool, they're really cool vampires. And then we've got sexy saxophone man all greased up there, still believing to this day. I actually saw him perform live that particular song a couple of years ago, and he was great. Tim Capello. And yeah, so it's like a fast pace, there's lots of humor, you know, that's a great film. And by comparison, Near Dark just was nowhere near as flashy and as star-studded, although it does have Bill Paxton, Lance Henriksen, oh god, Vasquez as well from it. So this is a cast of aliens, and this is about a traveling group of vampires. Like they sort of drive around in this blacked out van, and they're just kind of like vagrant vampires, and you know, there's some dynamics going on there, some tensions between some of them. We've got one that's a kid, and he's very cruel because he's not actually a kid, obviously, very like Claudia from Interview with the Vampire. And so one of the people in the group kind of like brings somebody into the fold, kind of without the knowledge or consent of the rest of them, and this is just not received very well. So we've got this human character that just doesn't know what he's getting himself into, and he's kind of like on the turn, like there's a point of no return and he hasn't hit that yet. And it's just about that really, and it's kind of harder to talk about without spoiling things, because every progression of the story is kind of like a spoiler if I tell you about the plot too much. But again, this has got a great vampire carnage scene. It's the bar scene. You all know, if you've seen it, you know this scene, and if you haven't seen the film, you might have seen this film come up if you watch like best vampire scenes or best horror carnage scenes or whatever. Bill Paxton is the standout for me in this film. I love the character and his performance. But yeah, I just feel like that one is a shame that it just doesn't have the notoriety of The Lost Boys, when I think that the story is actually a bit better. And yeah, it's not as flashy and cool, and we don't have an oiled up sexy sax man or anything, but it's more understated, but very brutal, nasty vampires that you wouldn't want to come across ever. Alright, so that's my top 10 vampire film recommendations. I would love to know if something new has come out that you think I'd like based on my taste. I would love to know about it, because I am really going to set aside some time in October to catch up on all of these great films that have been coming out that I've missed. I haven't seen anything new in so long. And also, if you're someone that has recommended films to me before, and then you think that I have just taken the recommendation, not watched the film, and ignored you, I have been keeping a list for the entire time I've been running this YouTube channel. Every time somebody recommends something to me, I write it down, whether it's a book or a film or a game. I do have that running list. I am planning to watch the stuff that you guys have recommended to me. because when I ask for recommendations, I really want them. I have so little time. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that sort of over Halloween time. Yeah, I'd love to know your favourites. I'd love to know your thoughts. If you're a Near Dark fan, please let me know. I need to know that there are more of us. I will see you in the next... Goddamn cat. I'll see you in the next video. Bleed.